There's cybersecurity issues, there's aging infrastructure issues, there's climate change issues that need to be solved, and I'm really excited that in my career I get to work on those types of problems. As a young professional, IEEE has given me access to opportunities to go to conferences, meet really cool people in the field, and so I think what IEEE provides is access to the larger community, and I don't know where else you would get that. IEEE USA is my competitive edge.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February edition of the IEEE USA Washington update. I am Eric Heilman, Director of Government Relations for IEEE USA in Washington, D.C., although I'm coming to you now from the IEEE Board Series meetings out in the Seattle area. Lots going on here, but our focus right now is going to be on what's happening in Washington, so let's dive right into it. So at a very, very high level, and a very simplistic level as well, this is sort of what's going on with the major pillars of government in Washington. The Trump administration, which is obviously garnering most of the attention and most of the media for a lot of good reasons, is moving ahead with some sweeping executive actions through the use of executive orders, and also through a lot of his nominations to fill his positions in the cabinet and the sub-cabinet level. And there's a lot of upheaval and churn at the federal workforce level in Washington, D.C. As I'm sure folks know, there are thousands of federal employees in the D.C. area, and a lot of what the Trump administration has been proposing and pushing and mandating is causing a lot of change, a lot of churn, and a lot of talk. So there's a lot of focus on that. In Congress, they are moving through a lot of the processes and legislation that normally would dominate the beginning of a year and the beginning of a new Congress. The Senate continues to move on the president's nominations to fill those cabinet spots. They've processed quite a few of them and are still on track to do more in the next coming weeks. And then they are, as the House is as well, turning pretty fervently to the budget and appropriations process, which we'll talk about in a minute. The House is also doing a lot of action at the committee level with a number of new committee chairmen in place and new makeups of those committees. Each of the committees are very interested in, and traditionally tend to hold sort of table setting hearings at the beginning of the year to lay out some agenda items, talk about some issues that the chair and the majority are interested in legislating on, doing oversight on, having hearings on. So there's a lot of that going on right now. But let's kind of dive into what is frankly dominating a lot of the news and dominating Washington in a big way. I think it's pretty fair to call President Trump the disruptor in chief. For better or for worse, he has come back into Washington and is proposing a lot of changes in his own style. I kind of like this quote that I found not long ago in the New York Times, really speaking specifically to the president's tariff actions, which we're not really going to talk about here, but it does sort of speak to a lot of the way that this president operates and how he sees things. Chaos, uncertainty, unpredictability. It's very interesting, but also very difficult to kind of try and track what's happening, understand the moves that he's making, and to kind of work in this environment. It does present quite a challenge, but this is the world that we're living in, and we are doing our best to navigate it. And I do still think that there are going to be some bright spots for some movement and even some successes. But challenges remain, no doubt. And yeah, I know everyone's seeing this. I know that this has been top of mind for a number of IEEE members, IEEE constituencies, folks within the scientific and technology communities writ large. And this is concerning to us. And we are tracking it as best we can and trying to understand exactly what it means, how it plays out. As I think most folks may be seeing, if you are watching a lot of the bigger actions on the executive orders, a number of these are quickly challenged in the courts, and then the court will put a stay or a hold or some sort of freeze on the action taken by the president. So it presents a very difficult environment in which to kind of challenge or speak to or sort of address a lot of these. We are doing everything we can to stay on top of things and to present the best case scenarios that we can. But we do know that this is a challenge, and we are going to operate in it as best we can and defend a lot of what is being attacked wherever those opportunities arise. While some of these actions are taking place, there are other things going on that give us a little bit of hope. One of the executive orders that the president signed recently reestablished his view, the president's version of the PCAST. This is the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. President Biden had established this group in 2021, 2022. President Trump essentially redid all that, and it's sort of his vision and his version of a scientific council of advisors, focusing on a number of the right areas: crypto, AI, semiconductor supply chain and resilience, data issues, data security, data privacy issues. So we are eager to see, where this goes and how this White House intends to constitute the meat and the policy action behind all this. But the fact that it's up and running and that it exists is a good sign. And in that vein, we're watching a number of the appointees that the president is bringing into government at the kind of sub-cabinet level. We've touched on this a little bit before in some previous Washington updates, as we've sort of gotten word and understood who will be coming into the new administration. There are three that I grabbed here just to highlight that I thought were interesting, significant, and certainly ones that we will be seeking to work with, and in some cases have in the past. Jared Isaacman is getting a lot of rave reviews in his potential new role as NASA administrator. I've said before, and I think we're going to talk a lot more about space policy and kind of the change in direction that we may see, and kind of a heightened sense of prioritization that this White House and this government will devote to that. Dr. Parker's another one that, frankly, we're a little excited to see. She is a former IEEE Fellow. We know her well. In fact, she served in a similar capacity under President Trump in his first administration. So we were pretty happy to see her back, and look forward to re-engaging her in this new role. So stay tuned on sort of progress with that and how that goes, because I think her role and OSTP generally is going to remain a big focus for the White House, but also for us in terms of understanding policy, getting policy changes enacted, and really sort of putting IEEE's stamp on as much as we can of what the scientific policy-making landscape is going to look like. And then Dario Gil's another one. I may have highlighted him before. I'm not sure. He comes out of IBM. And he said he's going to be the undersecretary at the Department of Energy for Science and Innovation. And he's said a lot of good things in the past that sort of align with IEEE's views, the views of our members, the interests of our members, particularly when it comes to the workforce, the future workforce in this country, and the need for the right sort of immigration policies to allow the workforce to grow and allow that future to be realized for the United States and for technology and for the innovative dominance that, frankly, everybody in Washington kind of likes to talk about and wants. So these are just a few that we're looking forward to working with, and that we do believe will have some impact in a positive way. I wanted to kind of report on a pretty interesting piece that came out by Senator Todd Young, a Republican from Indiana, in the National Interest publication. Todd Young is a really pragmatic senator, very conservative, very safe seat in Indiana, but he's a big supporter of technology. He's a big supporter of the CHIPS and Science Act. He was a key author of that bill, and has been a supporter since passage. And he also helps to highlight a lot of what IEEE cares about, in particularly the and science piece of the CHIPS and Science Act. And if you recall, the and science piece is a separate piece that has annual appropriations challenges, annual funding challenges for STEM research, for workforce development, for a lot of the R&D, and the meat and sort of the real science that needs to take place for the CHIPS portion of the bill, which funds much of the infrastructure and capital investment that you're seeing within the industry, in terms of new fabs and new facilities going in around the country. So that and science piece is really, really important, and to have a senator of his significance come out and argue for that is a really great thing. And he also sort of speaks a lot to the diplomatic and foreign policy lens on this. The IEEE-USA has been working with the State Department on the ITSE fund, the International Technology Security and Innovation Fund, which was set up under the CHIPS and Science Act to work with friendly nations in the region and elsewhere to grow their piece of the semiconductor supply chain industry, to kind of help realign and diversify the global supply chain. And the fact that Senator Young gives a really positive plug for this organization, this fund, is a really, really bright line for us. There's a lot in this piece that I recommend folks look at. It's not perfect, but there's a lot in it that I think we can take and use. And frankly, we're going to be seeking to meet with Senator Young soon to kind of talk through a little bit more of this, understand his plans for this Congress, and frankly how we can work together, because I think there are great opportunities there. Pivoting back to Congress, while a lot of attention in Washington is still on the president and his executive actions, Congress is focused in a big way on federal spending and the upcoming deadline for federal funding to run out. I haven't talked about it in a couple of months, but recall at the end of last year, there was no deal struck on a new federal budget for FY25. So Congress decided to continue spending authority based on last year's numbers via a continuing resolution bill, a CR, and set that deadline at March 14th. So we're coming up on that now. And Congress and really the Republicans, since they are in the majority in both chambers, and have the White House, there's an opportunity here for them to really craft a spending vision that comports with a lot of the priorities and mandates that they received and that President Trump received in this last election, and using the tools that they have as the majority. So there's a lot of action underway by various leaders on both sides of Capitol Hill to put together a new budget for FY25. And they plan to use a special legislative procedure called budget reconciliation, which I'm not going to go into in detail because it is extremely complicated. There are a lot of requirements and hoops and things that have to happen in order for this process to be played out to its very end. But the main takeaway here is this is a rarely used procedure, and really you only see it done when one party has a majority of both chambers of the Congress, and ideally also has control of the White House. Democrats used this in the past under President Obama. Republicans have used it in the past as well when they've had the majority, and this majority is planning to do that as well. There's a lot of sausage making going on here, but they're all trying to put together a very large package that would fund the federal government with new numbers for FY25, and also address priorities that they have on things like border security, defense, energy. You're going to see some tax issues in there. There's a lot of deadlines and expirations from the 2017 tax bill that was passed earlier, and I think Republicans are eager to act on those. And the key here is they can do this. The majority, the Republicans, can do this on their own without any votes from Democrats. There are ways to bypass, some of the guardrails and thresholds, particularly in the Senate, that exist in order to enact and pass legislation. So if you watch the news, if you're following any of this, you are going to hear budget reconciliation a lot. It's sort of the wonky term du jour right now in Washington. There's a lot of words on this page, and I apologize, but two senators that we work with very closely and that are very, very supportive of the science and technology ecosystems. Senator Mike Rounds, Republican from South Dakota, Senator Martin Heinrich, Democrat from New Mexico, co-chairs of the Senate AI caucus, which we do a lot of work with, are putting together a new campaign that they're calling the American Science Acceleration Project, ASAP, to really focus on the need to grow our science and technology sector and really focus on a lot of new development and new infrastructure needed to put America at a much more competitive advantage in a lot of these areas. This is just sort of a brief snapshot of what they plan to focus on. IEEE-USA was contacted by both offices and asked to support. We ran it through our leadership, our volunteer leadership chain, and there's an enthusiastic interest in being a part of this, which gives us a great seat at the table as the action items that will flow from this are being put together. So this is a positive development. Again, who knows where it's going to go, but it's a bright spot. There's a lot of other things popping in Washington. I could sort of piece apart any one of these and go a lot more in depth. But a lot of things are happening, as they typically would at the beginning of a year and the beginning of a new Congress. Hearings are being held, as I mentioned earlier. The House Science Committee has been very active in kind of holding these table setting and oversight hearings. They've already had a couple on topics of interest to us and to our members, and we have been in touch with the staff as the committee staff as these hearings have been announced and put together. We have suggested topics that members of the committee can raise, and in a number of cases, those have been raised. New legislation is being introduced and reintroduced. If you've been involved in a lot of what government relations here at IEEE-USA has been doing for the last several years, you'll know or will remember the Keep STEM Act. This is a bill that comes up almost every Congress, from Senator Durbin of Indiana, and typically has bipartisan support as well from the Republican side. This is a bill that essentially would rejigger the green card process to allow foreign-born students of engineering schools who graduate at a graduate level and have a job. It gives them a greater ability to stay in the United States for a longer period of time and get on a path to citizenship, which is something that we wholeheartely support. So that's going to be reintroduced soon. The House Robotics Caucus had been dormant for a number of years. This is essentially an informal grouping of members of Congress who have an interest in or would like to focus on robotics as a topic. That has been restarted by the bipartisan makeup of members of Congress who had led it in the past. This is also something that IEEE-USA has been involved in and worked with and supported. So we're very happy to see that take off again, and we look forward to working with them to focus on wherever they'd like to go. And I think we've got a lot of suggestions as well. Just a little development of interest. Freshman Representative Herodopoulos from Florida was named the chairman of the House Science Committee's subcommittee on space and aeronautics. So he's going to have oversight over a lot of what happens in the space policy world. Of note, and I don't think this is new, but most folks have talked about this, but he's noted maybe moving NASA's headquarters out of DC to a handful of states that could host it. This is kind of in line with the interest in shrinking the bureaucracy and the footprint in Washington, DC of the federal government. We may be seeing a lot of offices close or relocate. There's a lot of goings on in Washington, D.C. when it comes to the federal workforce, other than just the status of employees. The Senate has moved on a piece of legislation it tried to pass last year on a topic that, frankly, a lot of people, a lot of interests would like to see moved. It's not a perfect bill by any means. There are a lot of concerns about privacy, about free speech that some are bringing up, but it is a topic that many would like to see addressed, and that's sort of the ability of minors to access certain social media platforms and what the platforms are required to do about that. So we'll see. That's a bill that has been moved out of committee in the Senate and will go to the full floor. There's a piece of legislation that was introduced to extend the existing tax credit for production of semiconductor components. This was part of the CHIPS and Science Act. I'm not surprised at all. We expected to see a bill like this introduced. That particular tax credit has been very beneficial to industry, and I'm quite sure that this is something that will get traction and we'll get into a tax package, and it might get into that reconciliation package that I mentioned earlier. In terms of the nomination process, the Commerce Secretary nominee went before the Senate Commerce Committee for his nomination hearing and said a lot of things about a lot of topics and programs that are near and dear to our heart and that we work on and that we know well. A couple of positive things. Frankly, he sort of, wove through some of the issues pretty well. He had, favorable things to say about the CHIPS and Science Act, favorable things to say about NIST and the scientists and researchers there. We'll take those and use those in our interactions with the Secretary and NIST and others at the Commerce Department. These are obviously programs and people that are very important to IEEE USA and to our membership and to our policy goals. So we're going to use this and we're going to work with them. There's a new working group that House Republicans created on data privacy. Congressman Obernolte, who's been a big supporter of a lot of our policies and interests, is reintroducing his legislation to authorize NIST's AI Safety Institute. The name of that may change a little bit. There may be a de-emphasis on the safety aspect, but nevertheless, he's interested in moving forward to support this organization that IEEE USA had helped put together as well several years ago. So this is a good development as well. And in the communication space, the FCC space, there's been constant debate and conversation over what to do with FCC's Spectrum Auction Authority, which has been lapsed and needs to be addressed. It needs to be reauthorized. And I think the challenge there is what are you going to do with the revenue that auction garners? And of course, when there's new money coming in, there's always a fight about what to do with it, and that's something that senators are trying to wrestle with right now. There's also a new coalition, and frankly, there's a lot of stuff popping in this space. Folks are very interested in making sure that science is not forgotten. That in a lot of what's coming out of the White House against the science agencies is not all that people hear and know about science and technology research and development. The federal agency's important role in those. Seed AI is starting up a new coalition that IEEE USA is supporting. You can see the list on the right there of a number of supporters across academia, industry, research, universities. So we're going to have a seat at the table in terms of this coalition and what it does, and frankly, anything that brings this amount of support to the importance of science, we'll find a way to support it and make it work. So we're excited about where this might go as well. So let's talk about what we're doing at IEEE USA in terms of our programming. We've talked about our internship program before. We have extended our deadline for applications. It is now tomorrow. the 14th. We really encourage students to take a look at this and apply. Great opportunity to spend some time in Washington, D.C. learning tech policy, really bringing what you're learning at school to the government level and policymaking process. Washington, D.C. internships are kind of a rite of passage for a lot of people and are an institution in and amongst themselves. So we hope that we get some more applications here by the end of tomorrow, because it's a great program. Every year, right around the March Madness NCAA basketball tournament, we host a STEM challenge in the Ohio area, the Dayton, Ohio area specifically, which tends to host the last four in piece of the bracket. And this year it's going to be on Sunday the 16th in Fairborn, Ohio. It's a great event that IEEE USA has been hosting and promoting for a number of years, and just is a really great chance to get young people, to get kids involved in some STEM projects and learning and fun. We bring in students, graduate students and university students from the area, as well as any volunteers interested in coming and hanging out and having a good time. So this is taking place in March this year. And CVD, it's coming. We are less than 2 months away from our next Congressional Visits Day. And this is shaping up to be our biggest ever. Last year was our biggest ever at that time. And if registration numbers hold and continue to grow the way they have been the last several weeks, we are going to see a much bigger CVD, and we are very, very excited about this. Planning is well underway to make this a really great experience for IEEE members. It is open to all IEEE members in the United States, regardless of citizenship. If you live here, work here, study here, retired here, if you're an IEEE member and you're living in the United States, please consider coming to Washington, D.C. And joining us April 8th and 9th. It's going to be a great, great couple of days. April 8th is typically our training session. We'll bring you to a facility where we'll train you for a couple of hours on how to go talk to members of Congress, what issues are important. We'll put you in groups of other IEEE members from your state. We'll schedule your meetings for you, and the next day you go to Capitol Hill and you go do these meetings on your own. And it's been a really, really great event for us, and we're really looking forward to another great one this year. And then, of course, our cruise. This is going to be our third cruise, I believe. It's been very successful so far, and we have announced and are well underway with planning for the next one. We're going to the Western Caribbean this time around, sailing out of Galveston, Texas. So if you're interested and want to come network and have some fun with the IEEE crew, please take a look at this and sign up. It's going to be a great event. So that does it for this month's edition. I'm going to close what I have here, open up the comments, and I figured there would be a lot of questions. I haven't heard, in terms of NIST director or DARPA director nominees, I'm sure there are names out there. I haven't heard any, but that is obviously something that we are watching closely. And in fact, NIST is still trying to, it's operating under a temporary leader right now. Its mission and sort of authorities are kind of up in the air, like a lot of science agencies. A lot of members, a lot of the employees are under a lot of stress to figure out their status and may not be there in the next month or two. So I would like to have more on that, and hopefully by the next time we do this, we'll have a lot more insight into that. But I don't know. I haven't heard any names right now, or sort of where that stands. Let's see. You know what, Michelle, when I said former, I think you're right on that. I think I added that and I shouldn't have. It was not taken away. She is an IEEE fellow. She was, she will be, and that's my mistake. That's just a nomenclature mistake on my part. So I frankly should just take that out of here, but I'm glad you pointed that out. It was not taken away. She is still an IEEE fellow. Good question, Brendan, on how likely the Senate is to follow Young's recommendations. I don't know. I suspect because it's Senator Young and he is sitting on a couple of very important committees, and he is seen as a pretty senior voice in this space. I don't think nothing is going to happen. What I didn't say about that piece by Senator Young, and I probably should have, because really this is the key point. President Trump in the past has not said great things about the Chips and Science Act, and others in his circle during the campaign and even after didn't seem all that positive about it. I think largely that's because it was a Biden initiative. It was a signature Biden a program and bill, and that alone makes it something that the President Trump probably just wouldn't get behind. But I think what this piece is doing and is attempting to do by Senator Todd Young is to reframe what the Chips and Science Act is, to sort of realign a vision for it and a view of it that President Trump can get behind. And so I think that's its real value. It's not just that a senior senator put out a piece that is very supportive of Chips and Science, very supportive of the goals and the programs that bill created, but that it helps the President Trump in particular, and those who kind of look to him for how to navigate and speak about and deal with programs like this and bills like this. I think it helps to reorient the thinking, and I would not be surprised if at some point in the near future, President Trump doesn't figure out a way or doesn't just decide he's going to support Chips and Science. He's going to support what it is, and he's going to somehow find a way to get behind it. It may be rebranded somehow, but I think that this piece is going to help in that way. Question from Robert Burke about DOE and Trump administration, hostility to national labs. There was a hearing that I mentioned briefly that the House Science Committee had on the DOE labs. I confessed I didn't watch a lot of it. I saw some outcomes or some highlights, and there was a lot of positive talk and a lot of sort of positive reviews about what the labs do. I don't know what that means in terms of what the president is going to do or how he views or how this administration is going to view the labs. There's no way, nobody, as I've sort of said earlier, nobody can predict what he's going to do or how he's going to approach things. All I can say is it's helpful that the majority in Congress, in the House, and on that committee are speaking positively about labs and about the research and science that DOE supports. But we'll have to see. We're certainly going to do our part to highlight the importance of it. Let's see, IEEE Fund. You're right, Michelle. IEEE Fund. It is. As I understand it, the IEEE Fund's goal is to kind of help realign the global supply chain away from China, away from the few countries that sort of had a very a large piece of certain components or certain manufacturing, certain R&D, and diversify it a little bit more, and particularly to countries friendly to the United States. There's been a large focus on Latin America. I believe there was some action in Korea on some of this. So it's not specifically supposed to be for stateside firms, but it's for the kind of research, as I understand it, the kind of manufacturing that probably wouldn't occur in the United States anyway. It's a little more in the lower tech space. There are better words for this and better terms. But my understanding is that's the focus of it. And we kind of are trying to work with them to understand the supply chain, understand where the values lie. But it's a good thing, I think, overall. But Michelle, I'd love to engage a little bit more on this, just to kind of understand, where you're coming from and if you have any concerns. Let's see. NIH cap. I'm not hearing a lot about similar caps other than the EO from the president. I'm pretty sure that the somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the court action to halt one of the EOs was really more specific to NIH. So I'm not hearing any new changes to what the EO has proposed to other agencies. But if I can drill down more on that, I will certainly report out. You got a lot of good questions, Stephen. I don't have a lot of answers, but you're raising good things. Just from a large excise tax. I don't know about that. Maybe. I don't know. I have no idea on that question. It's a great question. I can look into it. But what I will say is, if there is a supporter of that, a supporter group, largely probably from universities and organizations that represent universities here in DC, there is a vehicle for that in this reconciliation package, which will have a lot of tax components. And there's no doubt in my mind that supporters of that are looking at avenues to do that. And I'm sure that there are members of Congress who would support this as well. This is just a guess based on, my understanding of how some of these tax bills come together. So we'll see. What else am I missing here? I think that's it. I kind of figured I'd get a lot of questions this time around. I'm sorry I don't have answers to everything. There's a lot going on, and I really look to many of you to kind of help guide us in a lot of ways, and help keep us informed, because there's a lot happening that is of great significance and great importance to our world, to your world. We'll do our best to stay on top of it. Steve, I'd love to talk to you more about some of this stuff. Michelle as well. Please email me, and anybody else, if there are questions that you had that you think of later or that I didn't quite address, please let me know. So we're going to do our next update on the 13th. And I think we might skip it on April just because of CVD and everything going on there, but stay tuned. Lots happening. Thanks as always for everybody's support. Please reach out if you have any further questions, and thanks for joining this one. I know this was a big one and an important one with a lot going on. So I look forward to working with everybody moving forward. Thanks.
I've always been a very hands-on person, and I like the beauty of a machine that is well put together. I'm excited to work here because we are building a state-of-the-art particle accelerator in order to make medical radioisotopes more available for cancer treatments. I want to build something that matters, and this is something that matters. Being a member of IEEE, there's a whole community of people who are interested in what you're interested in. IEEE USA is my competitive edge.